Welcome to another episode of the Matters podcast. We are so excited to have an incredible guest with us today, Mégan Van Der Speck, previously
Hey.
Mègan Shoulder.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks
Thanks
for
so
having me.
much for joining us. If you are new to the Matters podcast, please go up wherever you are watching this, if it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. There are tons of other podcasts out there. But yeah, let's dive into today. Welcome, Mègan. Please let us know, who is Mégan Van Der Speck, previously Mègan Shoulder.
Yeah. So
Just tell us a bit more about yourself.
cool. I'm Mégan Van Der Speck. Well, it's Mégan Shoulder, like you said. I just got married like 8 months ago.
Yes, congratulations.
I know. Thank you. It feels new and long all at the same time. Yeah, I'm from Mitchell's Plain, born and raised. Yeah, my parents are pastors,
Awesome.
and so kind of grew up in the church. Very unique situation because we grew up in like a church plant in the
Okay.
township area.
Okay.
So that was like my upbringing, and my introduction to Jesus was really like living
Awesome.
amongst the people, well, living amongst the community, amongst a township community, if I
Okay.
can put it that way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was like my introduction to life, my introduction to the world and God, and then like kind of learning yourself through that lens.
Yeah.
Because I was then going to school like in the burbs.
Yeah,
and like, you know, kind of going between the two worlds
Sure.
for a large part of my
Yeah.
my childhood.
Can I pause you there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why? What makes that so significant? Because you kind of highlighting it quite a bit, you know, in terms of
Yeah.
living in the community, in the township, and it sounds really significant. Invite us into kind of the significance and the meaning of what that is.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that I mentioned that so notably now, because it's not like I think about it all the time,
Yeah.
but when I think about myself and like who I am, that's so much a part of it.
Yeah.
It's part of like the way my worldview has been shaped, the way my understanding of people have been shaped.
Yeah.
And then as a result, the way my artistry has been like
Yeah.
shaped and
Yeah.
directed
Yeah.
because of that. Yeah, I think it's just opened my eyes to maybe like the fragility of life, in the sense that like things can be so different for so many different people.
Sure.
But like all of us are so alike
Yeah.
at the same time, you know. So
Yeah.
it's just like kind of seeing the similarities and then seeing the like stark differences and kind of holding them in all intention.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a makeup for. It's always powerful, you know, being amongst and seeing and feeling and yeah, just being amidst all those stories.
Yeah.
And like you said, it really shapes a worldview and a lens and how we live all of that out. And so
Yeah.
I'm really excited to hear that was such a big sort of part of the makeup of your journey. You mentioned you're an artist.
Yes, I am.
Tell us more about that. You know, I know that you've started something called Realizing Equilibrium. You've studied music.
Yeah.
Invite us into that story and how that started for you, where that's at currently.
Cool. So yeah, I studied music. I studied jazz at UCT.
Awesome.
I actually always wanted to study musical theater.
Nice.
It was always like my greatest dream to go to Broadway.
Yes.
I remember, like in high school, I was so set in it, and I was like in high school emailing like principals from the States, and I was like, "Hey,
cool.
can you set up an exchange program for me? Because I need to get into the
Nice. You
States.
need to
Like, I
make
need
this
to
happen."
exactly. I need to like get my foot in the door so I can go to Juilliard and like.
Oh, yeah.
That was like my dream. And it's funny because it felt like a dream in my heart, but my heart, it felt like it was far from like my heartbeat. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know how else to put it,
Sure.
but like that was a dream and it looked really good,
Yeah.
but my heart was beating in a way that like couldn't fully accommodate all of what that would mean. So like the kind of life that would
Wow.
look like,
Yeah.
you know, it's just like, I think, so when I was at the end of grade 10, I got accepted into the South African Youth Choir.
Amazing.
And then that got me a scholarship at a school, and then we
Yeah.
lived together as the choir. And so in my grade 11 and 12 year, like away from my family at a hostel, you know,
Yeah.
performing and traveling with the choir, going to school together and stuff like that, kind of being in that world, like at a young age, like maybe 15, 16, like asking myself like all these like hectic questions,
Wow,
like
yeah.
what does
At
it
such a
mean?
tender age.
Yeah, like what does it mean for me to choose this? You know,
Wow.
like what would it mean for me to choose something else?
Wow.
What could it look like? And am I happy with what it could look like along the way? You know,
Sure.
so it's just like asking all those questions.
Yeah.
Then led me to going, okay, like let's just put the musical theater thing on the back burner.
Yeah.
Because also like it's a very like niched thing, you
Yes.
know. So it's like I don't know. I just
Yes.
kind of was like trying to be calculated about the decision, which led me then to then study music
Sure.
at jazz music at UCT.
Yeah. Were you considering, because you said you had chosen it, you know, you were confronted by all these sort of realities and imaginations of what could be possible.
Yeah.
What were some of the other things that you were thinking about choosing? You know, what
Yeah.
were maybe some of those other options that you were imagining?
I think the reality of like I didn't want to be bored. I didn't want to be broke.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to just not think about I don't know the implications, all the
Yeah.
implications of that decision.
Sure.
But then also like in the back and forth and going like, so what do I do? What do I do? Like the thing that kept coming up in my heart when I was praying and
Yeah.
you know just asking God to like show me a sign or something.
Yeah.
The scripture that kept coming up was like, what do you have in your hands?
Wow.
And then I was like, oh, like how do I look at what I have in my hands?
Yeah.
And then like from that kind of decide like,
Sure.
you know, like let's hone this and this and this and
Yeah.
this so that like together it could become something that is closer to what my heart is beating for,
Yeah.
you know, and that was definitely like creativity that looked more like servanthood.
Sure. Sure.
And I was trying to explore like what does that mean for me and
Yeah.
what does it mean for the opportunities that exist in front of me and
Yeah.
like how do I choose?
So good. Go 16-year-old Mègan.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I should have just done it. You know, like, I don't know, it gets a bit complicated along the way. You're like, I should have just done, like, you know, what I thought in my heart and not thought about it so deeply. Because, I mean, I've often heard, like, doing what you feel is the right thing is obviously always, like, is often the most difficult,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, it's the long way.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like, oh, the long way sucks.
Yeah.
But it's definitely been really fruitful.
Yeah, that's so good. One of the things we say often at Jumpstart, you know, is wow. Clearly, we don't say it often enough because I'm forgetting it. But a business is a problem, you know, waiting to be solved. I think I'm paraphrasing that quite a bit. But I love how you held, you know, creativity and servanthood. You know, you held those two things together. Because again, another question we ask ourselves and we reflect on and we believe, you know, every entrepreneur, creative business person should be thinking, you know, is if we were not to exist today, what would go undone in the world? You know, and those kind of things kind of lead you into, you know, how do I take my creativity and how do I serve the people around me with it, which is exactly what you were alluding to. So you now 16 years old, you've done a deep dive with all of these questions.
Yeah.
What was on the other side of that for you?
So I guess for me, like it looked like honing the music thing because that's what I had in my hands.
Yes,
and then I guess trusting that from there it would open other doors, you know,
Yeah.
that it would connect me with other people
Yeah.
in different streams of creativity.
Yeah.
Along the way, funnily enough, I did like my first year of BMAs and was like, oh, this feels
Bachelor of
so...
Music.
Yes, Bachelor of Music, sorry, in jazz performance,
Yes.
specializing in voice, jazz voice. And then it felt so like claustrophobic, I don't know how else to put it. And I was like, oh, I need to like do something else.
Yeah.
So I kind of asked if I could like create a degree that like fell under like a BA and
Wow.
then I could keep my music performance like courses and then
Sure.
do like another major almost. So keep that as a major.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and so then I ended up then graduating
amazing.
with media and writing. So I did media and writing and
Interesting.
jazz music. Funny, because I mean, it's a long story how I got to end up doing that, but I actually have like a background in media. So it was funny that I ended up graduating with all these things that I'd already had in my hand, because I did like TV presenting as a child, and was involved in like some other TV shows. So it was like literally, I was like, these are all the things that I've had in my hands for like all my life. And so it was interesting to kind of be able to like graduate with that, and it really almost came full circle.
Sure. Speaking to that a bit, because I love that you discovered that at such a young age. I mean, you said you were emailing, people in the States, and you knew that you wanted to be in Broadway, and you were such a go-getter for those things. How do you discover, what's in your hands? Because I think so many people struggle with that. How do you identify that? What did that look like for you? And what could that look like for those listening and watching?
Yeah. I wish it was a more exciting answer because I think that's what it felt like. It felt so like this is all I know to do. You know, it felt just like, you God, I don't know anything else. Like I know to sing. Yeah. I know to play music. Yeah. Like I was playing piano since grade 2. Yeah. Like I know that I love like telling stories and, like all those things. I knew that I loved people. I knew that I loved the story of God for the world, like God's story for the world. I knew that I loved that. I knew that, I knew that I had like a thing for communications, which is like part of how I was able to do like all this have this presenting experience and stuff. And so it's like, I knew that I had all of those things, but it didn't feel like extraordinary. It just felt like when I look back at my life, at that age, it was like, these are all the things that I did, or like, these are all like the ways my interests have like led me into like discovering and experiencing things and opportunities. And then that's what I had to show at that age. And so it was as simple as that. Like, where are my interests? Where are my passions? Like, what have I done to this point? That kind of gives me glimpses of where they lie. Yeah. And then just being really honest with that. Yeah.
No, that's good. I think similarly for myself as I hear you speak, there are things that kind of I'm excited about and that I feel, joy and pleasure doing. But then there are things, that if you were to strap a heart, what is it, a thermometer, a heart monitor, not a thermometer, a heart monitor on my chest, the machine would explode, because I'm so excited about those things. And for me, that's always an indicator of, this
is
something.
Probably what you have in your hands.
Maybe this is something I should, invest in or, pursue.
And it's funny because I realize, I mean, especially the older I get, like not many people do that. Like
exactly.
For a lot of people, that's not their journey. Yeah. Like a lot of them kind of like only is like, it's super heady. Yeah. And like, this is what I need to do because of this and this and this. Yeah. And it like, there's nothing wrong with it. Like obviously you can choose that, sure. But it is a process. Like one of my favorite theologians, like always said and like stuck with me that the longest journey sometimes is between your head and your heart.
Wow.
And I feel like I've always taken that like to heart. Yeah. Like they have to connect. Sure. If there's a disconnect, then like how can I be whole in a space? Like how can I bring myself fully to something if like I can't be present with my head and my heart?
Yeah. That's so good, because often, that's what the world needs from us. You were speaking about, again, creativity and serving and what's in your hand. One, we are made richer by those things. And when I say richer, I mean, just the pleasure of life and the fulfillment of life. But also, the world needs those dreams. The world needs the best Mègan, and the best Calvin,
And that's all we have.
Yeah. 100%.
I only can be Mègan. Yeah. And that's what I had to be very like almost super scarily honest with. Wow. Because I'm like, but what if Mègan like doesn't add up? Like what if Mègan's not enough?
Wow.
Like it always came down to that for me. Sure. Which is scary, but then I was like, but then who else would I be if I can't be Mègan, in all that Mègan brings.
Yeah. And what helps you wrestle with that question, is Mègan enough? What gets you above that hurdle?
Yeah. Oh man. So many things. It's very layered. It looks like like things that have to happen in my body, soul, and spirit.
Okay.
So like on a spiritual level, like definitely my faith.
Yeah.
Like just like being very cognizant of like what does God actually say about me? You know, like how do I search out scripture to understand like this is the God of the universe. Like this is not like play. You know, like none of this would be here if it hadn't been for, you know, God.
Yeah.
So kind of going like, okay, if this is God, then I should probably like believe what God says. You know, I should probably take the time and actually like, you know, align my heart to like believing. So like kind of on a spiritual level, that's what happens.
Sure.
And then I'm reminded of things like, you know, just like Psalm 139, where it's when, you know, what God says, like fearfully and wonderfully made. I knew you know, even when you were in your mother's womb, I formed you like in the dark of the womb. Like, you know, there was so much intention there between myself and God, even myself as a seed, you know. And then kind of moving on like a soulish level, just creating like practices for myself that keep me aligned to that. I'm even like moving between soul and body, like very intentional to like do grounding work, like for my heart, grounding work, even for my body, you know. So like simply like making sure I often would like connect myself to like the land and kind of like just like biologically how all of that works and plays itself out. And and then just find things that work for me. I journal often. Like music and art helps me to process life, and so I always stay true to what that means, even in my like staying grounded process. Which is hard when music and your artistry becomes like something also that is work for you. Which is like a whole other conversation.
Which we should have that conversation. But that's good. You know, what I hear you saying is, you know, for you, step one is, you know, just saying, I agree with God. Essentially, you know, these things that God kind of says about me and that you believe, you know, it's kind of just starting there. You know, I agree with God. And then also I liked what you said even about, you know, music and that outlet, and you said journaling, and, you know, I'm sure that's like some sort of reminder for you, you know, about kind of just getting those things and reflecting on those things. But also for you, you know, music's one of your passions, and so it's also one of the things that help you and drive you and keep you sober and, you know, kind of inspire you as well. And I think that could look different for different people. You know, it may not be music for another person, but again, whatever is the thing in their hands or whatever their heart beats for, I'm sure would help inspire and move and motivate as well.
I did a job as a radio host for like almost 3 years at a community radio station called CCFM, and I was on the breakfast show. So it was nice, but it was so hard because it was like Monday to Friday, like almost 3 years. Like trying to get there at 5, like starting the show at 6, which is like you're awake and you're inspiring people. Like you have to be on at 6 in the morning every day. So like it was so draining because sometimes I like would have things in the evening and wouldn't get to bed in time anyway. Like accumulated over almost 3 years of that. Like my body was so down. And so I went to my doctor, like who's a homeopath, and just like my body was not in a good space because I wasn't getting enough sleep, or like my just nutrition was down. And he kind of was chatting to me about my adrenal levels, which I think sometimes we don't often think about. And so he was like talking to me about like how to how to just like almost like fill up my adrenaline tank or like my tank for like capacity because my adrenals were down so badly because of the lifestyle I was living. So like some of the examples that he would give was like have cold water swims, you know, like take walks, you know, breathe and pray and like, you know, do like grounding things, but kind of giving me like actual examples, like do what makes you come alive, because that actually biologically like fills up your adrenal levels, and then you know, like you can bring yourself fully to whatever you need to do.
That's awesome. So so UCT, you mentioned that you were presenting, a radio presenter also at CCFM. And then you've kind of created this vehicle. I'm sure you could describe it better. This vehicle called Realizing Equilibrium that maybe helps you live out a lot of this backstory. What is Realizing Equilibrium? What does that even mean?
Thanks. Thanks for asking. I always feel very apologetic sometimes when I have to, when people ask me that question. But it also felt like a step that just felt right, even just the name. Me processing like life through music and through songwriting, so like sitting at my piano and playing and singing and writing songs and stuff, like that whole experience always felt like, you know, like on a mathematical graph where the 2 points meet, like they call it like the point of equilibrium.
Yes.
And so it always felt like that, like my life and God, like it was the point where we met. And so like that like point of equilibrium always sat with me. And so
that's powerful.
Yeah, when I felt like there was a responsibility on the songs or on me to release some of the songs, that like I just spent years, it was part of my journaling process, I guess, writing these songs, you know. And so when I had actually gotten to the point of wanting to release it, I was like, then I didn't want to be Megan's shoulder, because I knew for part of like what means like servanthood for me is telling a story that I felt is much bigger than me. And I felt like I couldn't do that as Mégan Van Der Speck, because she's always changing. Like she'll always be growing, she'll always be moving, she'll, you know.
She'll
and so
move from shoulder to Van Der Speck.
Exactly. Like imagine I was shoulder. It would have been so confusing. But yeah, like it just felt the most authentic to go with something as neutral, and then to actually go, but like this is what it's been for me. It's been the point of equilibrium for me. But because it's always unfolding, like we're always realizing it, and so that's kind of where it came about. Yeah, Realizing Equilibrium.
No, that's such a beautiful name. Thanks for unveiling what that means and everything behind that. And so with Realizing Equilibrium, what's the journey been like so far? You know, what are you currently up to? What have you been up to? How far sort of in that story are you at the moment?
So I feel like baby, very baby steps.
No, like a giant baby.
Like a giant baby. It's hilarious and scary.
He's great.
But yeah, so I had released some 2 singles over the past 2 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I actually did some recording in Johannesburg with some incredible musicians and family.
Yeah.
And so, over time, so did a few recordings there, and then 3 years later released them as an EP.
Awesome.
So this past April, I released my debut EP, and Realizing Equilibrium.
Congratulations again. See,
Thank
giant
you.
baby. We'll probably stop with that picture though. It's like the making of a horror movie.
But I get what you mean, and I appreciate the acknowledgement, because it doesn't always feel like that, you know. It always just feels like this is all I have in my hand. Like I only have a baby.
Sure. And so I love that you took your passion and you created something from it. I really love that. I love that you created some sort of business type of stream, in inverted commas, if you want to call it that or not. What is that like? What is that journey, the sort of business side of, having this passion and trying to create something that would serve the world, but also it's a business. Just take us into that story, and maybe I'm sure there's been tons of challenges and successes and everything else in between. What is it like holding those two things together?
Sure, all the tensions.
Yeah.
So definitely, say if I could call it the brand.
Yeah.
The whole brand story is really that it music and my artistry becomes serving.
Yeah. So
the same way an accountant would serve.
Yeah.
A role or a function in the way society is set up and stuff like that. I felt like I just wanted to be a policeman or a nurse. I wanted my music to be like that,
Yeah.
And kind of move away from the idea of like creating like a star persona around my artistry. And I mean, I only say that because that's the way that I'd had to like process through it. I'm not saying that like if you're a star that it's bad or anything. But like that was my heart, and so kind of like journeying through what that means and what that could look like is difficult when thinking about it as a business or as a business or as like a brand. Sorry, tongue twisted. Like it's been quite challenging. For the most part, I knew like I'm an artist. Like no one really knows me. Like I don't have any work. I didn't have any work out at that point. Like how am I going to record things? And the thing that made most sense to be for me, which was just like self-funded. Like get a job that can, bring in some kind of capital and then just fund it yourself and then have something to like show for your creativity, for your artistry. So that was like step one. That like made the most sense to me. I mean, now it's really cool because there are like funding opportunities available, especially now kind of post-COVID. Like they've kind of trying to be quite intentional for musicians and artists for opportunities and stuff. But I mean, it's still quite difficult in a very small industry in our country, especially our city, where there's not as much support and you kind of like have to make it work for yourself. And so, I mean, like all those tensions now just look like, how do I stay true to the story, which sometimes is so far from like capital gain or like profit, you know? It's so far from that, but at the same time, like I need capital and profit to like keep it going. So like, how do I hold those two? Which has been difficult. I'm still trying to figure it out.
That's so good and so helpful and so honest. So thanks for that. Speaking to, how do you keep going when things, maybe you're not seeing the results you want to see? How do people, creatives, musicians, you've started, and you kind of a little bit into the journey, but things are actually just hard and difficult, and maybe the measurable results don't quite add up as you've maybe imagined when you started. How do you keep going through all of that?
Sure. I don't know if this is like a cop-out or if this, I don't know, it's just like a coping mechanism for me. But like I've always thought about, I think the story of my music and stuff is very much connected to what music means to me and what creativity means to me, and that it's like a very rested, very like home space, you know? And I feel like that's always helped me, like music, artistry, it's just been home for me, And I don't know if it's because of my family, like both sides are quite musical and stuff. So family gatherings always meant like music was involved. So I'm not sure if it's because of that, but like my artistry was always like home. It was always a safe space. And it still is such a safe space for me. And I feel like I've had to be intentional to like always come back to that reminder. Like this has just been a safe space for me. Like before it was money or before it was before any, anyone knew who you were or like you could enjoy it, like it was just a safe space. And I think that's what it always comes down to me, and that's what I always have to remind myself of. Like sometimes it's literally just me like sitting at the piano, like crying and singing random things to Jesus or whatever. It has to be home. It has to always be home. Otherwise, I think it'll be hard. It'll be very strained.
No, that's good because, it's I think often, somewhat of the glorious moments and the big moments, moving from one big moment to another and in between is this like mundane.
Yes. That's so good because... Sorry, I don't know if I'm breaking your word, but you just got me riled up for a second. I realized like that was part of it for me. I mean, even being part of the South African Youth Choir, and so like performing with the team, doing like a bunch of, because the high school I was at before that, Pinelands High, they were like super into the arts, like, did a lot for their like productions and stuff like that. And I remember like in high school feeling that way, like there's so much like emphasis and like we rehearse for so long, like almost like full day rehearsals, like you're broken and you still have school and like all these things. And then it's just, ends, and then you're like, and then what?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
if
yeah.
I live for the applause,
Yeah.
and the applause ends, then who am
Sure,
I? You know, like
sure.
those are very real questions for me in the
100%,
beginning, and so
yeah.
I think that's why it had like had to it had to be that for me. I had to realize like, where does this come from?
Yeah.
Outside of the applause or outside of the platforms.
Yeah.
Like it comes from home. It comes from just feeling like this is
100%.
good. This feels safe for me. This feels right.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
Because the applause does end, and
Yeah.
you need to know who you are
Sure.
after the applause.
So good, so good. And that can look different for different people. You know, it could be, you know, whatever that sort of outlet looks like for you. It could be maybe you're doing workshops. Maybe it's, you know, a paycheck. You know, do people even use that word anymore these days? A salary, you know. Maybe, you know, it's a concert, or, you know, you're doing, you know, kind of the big things, whatever that big thing is for you.
Like a meeting.
Yeah,
Like
a meeting, you
show
know.
up and-
But now you kind of have to go home and like fold your washing and stuff.
Exactly.
You know, and you have to do like the
Exactly.
everyday life stuff, or,
Exactly.
you know, maybe the gap between those big things are just quite far for you.
Yeah.
And I think what helps, as you've mentioned, is, you know, kind of finding what is home. And another word maybe to describe that is, you know, to find your why. You know, it's your why that will pull you through that mundane. It's the why, you know, that like, cut me and I will bleed this thing.
Yeah.
You know, like that's how deeply embedded it is inside of me. And I think it's those things that help us to keep running when it's really hard.
Absolutely.
And I think when there's a void of that,
Yeah.
it's difficult. And also it's difficult to keep that in front of you all the time.
Yeah. You have
Yeah.
to like create those buffers for yourself.
For
like
sure.
You have to create that for yourself. I feel like if you're thinking about sustainability as
Yeah.
an artist, just as a person in your
Yeah.
career or your field or whatever, like there has to be more than that.
Yes.
Like there has to be breath
Yeah.
in the process. Otherwise, the process is dead.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think those breath. Like I've had to be intentional to like celebrate those breath moments.
Wow, that's
because
so
they mean life to my bones.
Yeah,
You know,
wow.
like they mean like blood through my veins.
Yeah.
And so I celebrate them, because without those breath moments, like there wouldn't be platform moments.
Yeah,
You know.
so cool,
Yeah.
so cool. One of the things I really love about your music, Mègan, is that it's so authentic. It's such a unique sound.
Thank you.
You know, and I would imagine it's hard to be an artist these days, because there's so many other artists and there's so many people doing these things, you know, and there's so many. It's such a big market, as is with any other space. You know, how do you find what is authentic to you, and you know what is honest? What keeps you looking to the left and to the right, and you know, maybe seeing, hey, they're doing this, or he or she is doing that. You know, how do you, amidst all of that, find what is authentic and real and honest for you?
Sure. That's such a like important question, because to answer it though, I think part of it for me is like what do you have in your hands? Like what is the sound? What are the interests? Like, you know, where does the music go for you in your mind?
Yeah.
And like, I don't know what it's like for other creatives, but like my creativity like really like feels like it flies when I'm like in the shower, like on the toilet, like driving in my car, you know.
A lot of bathroom things.
Yeah. Which for me, like I don't take that for granted, because I'm
Yes.
like, you're almost the most vulnerable in that space, you know.
100%.
And so that's probably where you're the most true. Like that's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
where you're the most authentic.
Sure,
you know,
sure.
like you kind of realize like what you bring into those naked moments of your life, you know.
Yeah.
And
you're
so
kind of just alone with yourself. And,
and your thoughts and then I think like from that it's just always been like, this feels right. Like it feels like it like doesn't feel separate from my body and my heart. Like it feels all together. And I feel like whenever you create from that space and like listening to other artists and just kind of like hearing their journeys, you kind of hear a similar thing. Like when you create from that space, it'll always sound unique, because there's no one like you.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
like what we spoke about in the beginning. So I feel like the work is not to create a unique sound. The work is just to find like, how do you be the most excellent version of like what you have in your hands?
that's
You know,
so
how do you like put it together and make it beautiful?
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool. Thanks. How do you have language for what realizing equilibrium sounds like? What
Yeah.
what is that?
No.
What is your uniqueness in?
Sure. I think funny, when I was 12, I remember sitting at my piano and just feeling like, I want to write songs. I felt so frustrated because I was doing like classical piano at the time. So I was like playing all these pieces and I'm like, I just want to play like Alicia Keys. I just want to be them, like,
nice.
you know,
Yeah.
like, yeah, just kind of like pouring my heart out and that stuff. And I think like, what felt like stuck for me was like, I can't tell the story. Like, I want to tell the story, you know?
Yeah.
And so through processing like my artistry and like, you know, what that means, it always felt like, and I feel like there's a story that I have to tell.
Wow.
And it's the story of like all these things that I spoke about, like authenticity, like God's story for the world that aligns us all to like hope and truth and love. And just the story that like is true for like me and where I come from. You know, I do feel a responsibility to come from where I come from and to have the opportunities that I have. I feel like I can't pretend that isn't important, you know. And so it's just like all those factors matters to me when I think about the story that I need to tell. And so ultimately realizing equilibrium, I think about it as a story that I'm curating and constantly telling. That like involves all those things, and then that would sound whatever it needs to sound to tell the story authentically.
That's so cool. No, often I'm invited to, you know, either share in a place or it's, you know, do a workshop or all these things, and sometimes I could feel the pressure of, you know, wow, there's so many other, you know, great people that can go and do that. And what often sobers me is, you know, it's not so much about speaking or sharing. It's about, you know, what do I have to say? And that's it's so small, but it's such a huge, for me personally, it's such a big switch that flips, you know, and kind of just relieves all, you know, I have something to say. You know, rather than like there's this talk and I need to like you know, and it just kind of sobers me in. Okay, Carl, like what do you have to say?
It's so cool because there's something that's helped me in even like something as technical as like warming up my voice. I've been on this journey like with the Alexander technique with my singing teacher because I needed like voice rehabilitation, and so
2 seconds Alexander technique.
It's not a 2-second thing, but it's just like it's a way of like practicing like an art form. It started, I think, in acting, and it's kind of like evolved into music and other things. But it works in like your most natural like posture, and then it like allows you to practice your art through your physical makeup and like helping to guide the muscles necessary to make the sound, to make do the movements, but it doesn't strain. You aren't like trying to mirror something you've seen. You're just in your body. And so it's
you pause.
Thank you. It's a lot more than that, Shame. I'm sorry for the Alexander technique expert listening to this. But
in a nutshell.
But with that, it's like brought up the question for me every day, or like when I'm warming up my voice, which generally is every day. I'm like, where are you? Like, where are you today? And that question has been so significant for me because it like allows me to be present with like, what is my voice? Like, what am I actually wanting to say?
So cool.
And I think connected to that is, I always thought about, there's a scripture, I think it's in Proverbs, and it says like, your gift will make room for you and like set you before kings. But the follow-up question that for me was always like when you get there, what will you say? Like you can be before kings, you can have all the things, but when you get there, like who are you? Like what would you have to say? What is the story that you would tell?
That's powerful.
So
Sure. Lastly, to land the plane, it sounds like, you know, since really young, there's been these dreams and pictures and just things that have really welled up inside of you. What helps you move those things from dream to implementation or action? You know, because it can feel like such a far stretch or leap or jump. What helps you make that jump? No, what moves you from I want to be in Broadway to like I'm gonna send this email to like peeps and those type of things?
I think like there's also just kind of a logical part of like what are the like components that would make this to be what you need it to be. Like I needed to research like the best musical platform as an independent artist to release my music on. I needed to figure out what the best one would be for me, what I could afford, you know, like I had to do that research to understand like the story is important to me, the brand is important to me, you know, and so you kind of just like do the small things that need to be done in order to like keep it moving, to tell the story, to make it happen. And I don't. For me, what helps me do it is not to think about it in a grandiose way. I think I'll just be paralyzed if I think about it in, we're gonna make this like big thing happen. I'll just be like, no. But I think for me, it's like faithfulness. Like, how do I just remain faithful? To, how do I, work with what's in my hands? Because if I don't remain faithful, like nothing's gonna happen. And so if you don't do it, like who else is gonna do it? And so that helps me to like keep moving and to keep like moving in a direction that I feel like serves what I need to say, like the story I need to tell. And for me as a creative, and maybe it would be similar for other creatives, I don't know, and maybe for you as whatever you do, but it's like, it's not separate. I think that's what was important for me because authenticity matters to me. And so I can't do something that I feel like I can't do while I'm cooking, or like I can't do something that I can't think about like while I'm like driving or and so the process is always unfolding for me even through the like mundane kind of life things that happen. Like yesterday I was at my cousin's dance show and it was so inspiring, like these high school children like doing all these like incredible dance pieces and I was sitting there and I felt inspired and like I started like writing things down for like plans that I had, like for some things with like, realizing equilibrium, like made some notes on my phone and so like for me, like that's part of the process. That's part of like keeping things going. It's part of like staying true and faithful to the story. Not missing those moments. Like the other night I woke up and I was singing a song in my dream. I don't know. This is like the song in my dream and I woke up and I'm like, I need to record it on my voice. So like record a thing. So, because I knew that I forget. But it's like all those small things that like it seemed like so insignificant, but it keeps it going. Like it really keeps it moving,
I love that, kind of making this grandiose thing really small and tangible and just actually like actionable like right then and it helps you get to those places.
My husband often talks about them starting a business and like writing it on the serviette, like writing their business plan on the serviette at the restaurant they were at, so like,
that's incredible,
like right there.
I also loved what you said about being at a high school play or dance. Because I think putting yourself in spaces that you're able to see other people actually doing the thing, it really helps drive you.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Mègan.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your incredible journey so far. I am a huge fan. I'm a Realizing Equilibrium groupie.
Thank you. I'm a Jumpstart groupie.
No, but honestly, please go and find Realizing Equilibrium on all digital platforms. Realizing Equilibrium is doing really amazing things, and maybe a sneak peek into some things that we may be seeing happening in the near future with Realizing Equilibrium.
So definitely wanting to share it live. So definitely more live music.
Nice.
That's all I'll say for now.
But some exciting things coming. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you back on the show really soon.
Yay.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers, everyone.